huge experience.
Journalist, musical theatre, a lawyer, digital marketing. It's copywriting for a while, freelance, just working. And then
Hello guys, today I am with Amanda. She is a director at Cedarwood Digital agency. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that you agreed to visit us.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be sharing my knowledge with everybody.
And today we would like to discuss secrets to SEO and digital PR success, because Amanda has huge experience in this, and I hope that this video will be helpful for all people who started their journey in their own business. So Amanda, word to you.
Definitely starting an SEO agency has a lot of challenges, and I've learned a lot along the way. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to impart some of that knowledge on everybody. But in terms of where I started, so my background is actually interestingly very different from SEO. So I actually started out as a journalist. I grew up in Melbourne in Australia. So I grew up in climates that are far sunnier than this. I'm based in the UK now. But when I was young, I went through that kind of phase where, you want to be a lot of different things. So I started off wanting to be a lawyer. I did some lawyer work experience, and I just thought, no, I can't do this. Then I wanted to be an actor. And then I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I tried sort of doing some drama for a bit. That wasn't quite for me. And then I really wanted to do musical theatre. And then I tried that. And I kind of went through all these phases. And eventually I settled on journalist. And I went to university and I studied, and I did a bachelor's degree in journalism and then a master's degree in journalism. And then when I came out of university, the journalist landscape was just very different to what it was when I went in. So I did kind of 5 years at university, and at the start, there was a lot going on with journalism. And then towards the end, we had, obviously, the internet had become really popular. This makes me sound really, really old now when I say the internet had become popular. But what I mean by that is, journalism had become more online based. So sort of citizen journalism, people being able to take video on their phones and, reporting, so that the need for kind of a journalist on the scene had diminished a little bit. So I sort of looked around during my master's degree to see how I could apply, transferable skills from journalism to another field. And I decided to look at the field of digital marketing. So that was kind of how I initially got into that from my background. And then I went traveling for a while. So I spent 1.5 years traveling, and I did kind of Southeast Asia. And then I moved back to the UK because I was originally from the UK. And I kind of found a job at a digital agency. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I'd applied for a few different things, but I landed a job as a copywriter at an SEO agency at the time. And that was very much how I kind of started out in SEO. So I learned about it really on the job, as well as, looking at external training courses, going to conferences and everything along those lines. And the first part of my career was very much based around kind of spending 6 years at an agency, learning the ropes. So I did copywriting for a while, then I did content strategy, then I did a bit of PPC, so just to kind of try and see if there was maybe something, slightly different I wanted to learn. And then I was a head of digital, so I then oversaw the whole function, so the SEO, PPC, the kind of whole digital marketing aspects. And then I would say, as I was probably into my 6th year, and I'd been doing this for about a year, I really liked the idea of going freelance. I just wanted a bit more control over my time. I enjoyed traveling. So, I just wanted to have a little bit more flexibility. So really, when I started Cedarwood, I had no plans to have a big agency. I just sort of planned to freelance initially. But I kind of left the agency that I was working at, and I started my business. I had a little bit of support at that time. So I think probably the first thing that I would say for anyone, well, I guess the first thing I learned when I started my business was to build your network. So network is so incredibly important, because otherwise, especially in the current state of affairs, it's really difficult to get new business. So it's really difficult to kind of get a grip and to get sales in. So I was really lucky when I started Cedarwood. I already knew quite a lot of people from sort of previous work that I'd done, from people that I knew in the industry. I'd been going to events, networking, conferences, all of that. And I'd really been trying to connect with people and establish myself before that happened. So about 8.5 years ago now, I started Cedarwood, and I can't believe it's been 8.5 years. It seems like such a long time. It seems like only yesterday since I started out. And when I started Cedarwood, it was incredibly lean. We had this little shipping container. There was no windows. There was nothing. It was just a shipping container in a place called the Sharp Project. So it was almost like a kind of a funded place with the government funds for startups to give support. And we only paid, I think it was £140 a month for rent,
Oh,
which is, next to nothing for a rental space, compared to what we probably pay, a lot more than that now. I would say like probably 50 times that now. So it was really nice to have that support from the start, but it was very much just a shipping container. It was probably, as wide as to sort of the end of the door there, straight, with just one, glass bit at the end. So it was challenging at the start, for sure. And then I remember actually when we first upgraded to a double container, we got kind of glass on both sides, and I thought that was a real step up. And we managed to get 6 people in that office, and you could actually see out of it. So that was, that was a really big bonus as well. We were still in a building as such. We were just in kind of this big warehouse, which just had all these different containers in it. But I knew that when I started up, I needed to be really lean with what I was doing. So the, office space was a big kind of overhead that I needed to cut down. With my first staff member, I remember we initially were working at my kitchen table, and I was like, very quickly, no, this isn't going to work for me. And I don't think it really works for them either, to be honest. Working at someone's kitchen table is not, the greatest way to kind of start. So this was a really good investment. It was a bit out of town, so there was a little bit of a commute to get there, and that did make it a little bit more difficult with our initial hires because it was a little bit of a kind of trip for them. But it helped to keep our overheads down in the first year. And then, really from there, just in terms of the business itself, we grew, we developed, we hired staff. We moved office space. So we're in Manchester city centre now, which is much better for kind of attracting staff and so on and so forth. And then I really just kind of grew the business from there. And obviously we can talk about the different aspects of it in more detail. But I guess just as an overview, that was very much how we started. So I'd previously been head of an agency. I'd kind of decided I wanted to take the leap myself. I started off freelance, and then I hired a staff member, and then we just kept getting more work, a lot of referrals, a lot of word of mouth, people that I hadn't worked with for years kind of, coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh, hey, I need, an SEO agency for this and for that. And it just kind of grew from there. And now today we have 12 staff. We're based in the city centre. We've won awards for our work across the UK and Europe. So yeah, it's been a really exciting 8 years, and I'm really kind of looking forward to talking about it in a little bit more detail, because there's definitely a lot of lessons that I've learned along the way.
I have a question. You cannot answer, but how many hours did you sleep that time?
When we started out,
Yeah.
not very many. Honestly, very, very few. And there was very, very few days off, because especially at the start, I was everything. So I was building a website, and I am not a website builder by trade. So I was on, Wix and WordPress, learning how to build a website. I remember one Christmas, the first Christmas that I kind of had the business, I had no Christmas. I was just working. And then in the evenings when I came home, I was working, trying to build those relationships up. So I would say I had, very few hours sleep. I thankfully had a really supportive partner who was there to kind of help out from time to time, because there was not a lot of time. And I think also when you start your own business, it's very hard to delegate. So a lot of people, when they talk to you for your business, they buy into you, and they know your experience. And then when you're hiring staff members, particularly at the start, because now I have staff that have been with us for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and I know that they're really good, and I know how they work, and I know 100% that when I'm selling a service to clients, they're going to get a really good service, because I've worked with these people for a long time, and I trust that. But at the start, as with anyone new, you don't know. And that was very much where I was at. So I, particularly at the start, felt like I had to be very heavily involved in every aspect of the business. And I think as a result of that, I definitely didn't get much sleep. And I also didn't take much holiday. And I took my laptop on holiday with me a lot. I still went traveling and I still went on holiday, but I would just have my laptop kind of accompanying me when I did it. So yeah, not a lot, to be honest, at the start.
I think it's a common mistake when people start their business. The first lesson is try to delegate, but you cannot delegate until you build your own workflow because it's your business. You need to know at least the basic stuff of your workflow for each department because you need to manage and delegate them. And until you done this, you cannot delegate it. And I think it's a huge mistake when people start build their business and start to delegate it. Probably it's work, but if you're a talent of delegating, but I think it's a skill, and to achieve this skill, you need to work a little bit as a website builder, as a link builder, as a content writer to do your job by yourself. It's quite interesting to me to meet people who had experience in journalism because I'm working on the opposite side and I try to pitch journalists. So recently, MacRack has published their study for the last year that a lot of journalists just ignore pitches. What do you think about it? Maybe you have some funny stories from your journalist life experience about some fun pitches, or how what journalists feel in general when they receive some pitches. How does it work inside?
So I think, looking back to my years as a journalist, so I worked across a number of different. I worked as a TV journalist for a little bit. I worked as a print journalist, and I also worked on radio. So I got kind of the full breadth of the experience. And I think the one thing that I would say about journalists, and I imagine this has only gotten worse since I did it, is just purely how busy they are. So, every morning we would go into, so let's say, for example, it's a newsroom. We would go in, we would be given, I don't know, 4 or 5 stories that we had to cover that day. If we were working on a TV round, we would have to go out and film our piece to camera, film the interviews, film the footage and everything within a day. And it would be packaged for the evening news. If it was a print round, we would be given some stories by the editor in the morning, which we had to cover and complete. And then obviously we would accept pictures from mainly PRs for the rest of it. But fundamentally, I was always time poor. So the whole time I had no time. And I know it's a lot worse now for journalists, and as there are fewer of them and there's still as many stories that they need to cover. So I think that's really, really challenging. I had I had a really awful experience once, actually, when I was very new to my job. I was able to interview Roger Federer as he was playing in the Australian Open, and I was so excited to speak to him. And I was so excited to speak to him that I forgot to record the interview. So I was talking to him on the microphone, and I was like, I'm asking really awesome questions, and I was getting really good answers from him. And I obviously had a deck recorder with me, and I completely forgot to record everything that he said. And then I remember coming back to the office and getting ready to kind of write it up, and it was like one of the main stories for the day because he was in the Australian Open final. So it was a really, really big story. And turning my tape deck on, and there was nothing on it, and I was beyond distraught. I was so upset. I was just like beside myself. I didn't know what to do. And I just remember having that conversation with my editor. My editor just absolutely tore into me, and she's like, no, this is supposed to be our biggest story of the day. And you've just forgotten to record it. How could you forget to record it? But I was so starstruck in the minute that I saw him. I was just like, oh my goodness, it's Roger Federer. That I did, my brain just hadn't computed to push the record button on the tape deck. And therefore I had no quotes, and therefore I couldn't run a story. And I think that probably is the other thing when we're talking about, pitching. One lesson I learned pretty quickly is if you don't have expert commentary, you don't have a story. It's not enough to just write about something. You have to back it up with that information. And I couldn't just write about Roger Federer being in the Australian Open, because the whole meat to that story was, everything he had to say, what his training had been like, how he felt about it, that he was looking forward to it. And, I couldn't remember enough to kind of put that down. So that was definitely a very traumatizing experience for me. I remember another time I was filming a piece to camera. So that's where you talk to the camera, to talk about your story. And we couldn't get the right angle. And I had a big camera box, and I stood on the camera box to just try and get a bit taller because I'm not very tall. And right in the middle of filming the piece to camera, the camera box gave way. I fell over and broke my wrist. So that obviously wasn't ideal either, but we'd been trying to sort of get the right shot. So there's, to be honest, I really loved working as a journalist. There was always something, new and different every day. But I think what I would say is, on top of having to go out and film the stories, and on top of having to go out and get the comments and report back, there wasn't that much time I actually spent on my desk. So I know that people, PRs in particular, are spending a lot of time pitching. But realistically, in order for me as a journalist, and like I said, this was a few years ago now, so things might have changed. But in my experience, in order for me as a journalist to kind of pick up your press release, timing is a big thing. So if it came in while I was sat at my desk, that was a big bonus. If it came in at a time when I was out doing something, whether that be, interviewing someone or getting quotes or getting, anything like that, and I came back and I had 60 pictures, I was
Oh,
less likely to read through it. So, that was part of it's luck of the draw from that perspective, just what I happened to be doing that day. And I think the other thing was, everything had to be in that email. So I needed all the information, I needed all the data, I needed the methodology, like a really, really clear methodology, in that I just didn't have the time to go through and kind of find that information out myself. I needed a clear methodology. I needed clear quotes. I needed to understand who those quotes are from. If there was any images, I needed like a really clear imagery, or a link to like a high res Dropbox or something with that image in it. I just needed everything right then and there. And those were the press releases that I was more likely to cover. Obviously, great story was important. Obviously, it still had to have a newsworthy angle. But realistically, it was about having everything there and having it at the right time.
let's follow your key challenges. So what are key challenges every digital agency owner can face from the start?
Sure. So I think when I was doing this deck, if you were to ask me about key challenges, I could probably do about 10 slides on them, because there are a lot. Running an agency is challenging, but also very rewarding. I just kind of want to add that. I definitely love what I do and I wouldn't change it. But I'd say the four kind of key issues that we face, or the four things that we kind of come across the most. So first is finance. So that's kind of a simple business challenge: money in versus money out, making sure that the business is solvent, making sure that we're making profit, paying our staff, paying our suppliers, and also making sure that our clients are paying us on time. That's another big issue that we face as a small business. So, from the very start, if you're looking at starting a business, we're looking at things like, how do you fund? So I chose to self-fund my business, which means that I own it 100% and I don't have kind of external stakeholders that I have to report back to. So that for me is really important, because it means I have ultimate autonomy. Other people choose to take investment at the start for perhaps a share of their business. So I think that's something that a lot of people need to think about. And from a financial perspective, very much, where do you save your money and where do you spend your money? You can't be too frugal with it. So, you do have to spend on marketing. We have an allocated marketing budget that we spend on. It could be talks, it could be advertisements, it could be just promoting ourselves on social media, but you have to do it. And when I started Cedarwood for the first couple of years, I didn't do anything. I didn't do any marketing. I didn't do any talks. I didn't have any visibility, both for myself as a personal brand and for the brand in general. And people just, they won't come to you if you don't have the visibility, because they don't know that you exist. So I think that is really important. How much time do you spend on marketing and how much budget do you allocate there, and ring fencing that so that you have that kind of opportunity available.
How we can divide, for example, marketing expenses from the start? For example, 50%, 70%. I don't know. What number can you recommend?
So I've always done 15%. And
Wow.
a lot of it obviously depends on sort of profit and turnover. So it will depend by business. But by doing 15, I feel like that's enough for us, because also it's taking into account how much you can actually take on. So if we spent 50% on marketing, we would probably get a lot of leads, but also we wouldn't have the capacity to service those leads. And as a small agency, we don't really want to grow to kind of 50 or 60 staff, because that's not our unique selling point. It's not kind of our niche. So it's about finding the right kind of leads in the right volume, and that's roughly where we sort of spent our marketing budget, and that's what's worked well for us. On to the next point for a key challenge, I would say staff. So staff are any business owner's challenge, I think, whether you're in the digital space or not. But I think in the digital space, it's more difficult because people tend to move around a lot more. So I think there was some data here in the UK that the average tenure of someone in digital marketing is around about 9 months, which is just a nightmare for an agency owner, really, because 9 months is not a long time for someone to stay in a job, especially by the time you spend kind of training them, introducing them to clients, etc. So staff retention is incredibly important and a really big challenge that we face. We try to get around that by obviously promoting a good company culture, making sure that we're recruiting the right people, so people that we feel are going to have a good time at Cedarwood and make a good contribution, making sure that we're paying at market level. And again, and just kind of doing a salary benchmarking. So we do this every 6 months to make sure that our salary range is suitable with the market, so we're not, underpaying or overpaying accordingly. And just checking in with our staff, so doing kind of 360 reviews every 6 months to make sure that we're taking on board their feedback and identifying any issues, and having sort of monthly MPRs. Again, an opportunity for them to kind of raise any potential concerns and kind of deal with them quickly. So I'd say staff is definitely a very big issue for agency owners and something that we need to kind of look through and address. I think the third biggest issue is sales, so new business. And this is something in our industry at the minute that is particularly challenging. So, the agency space now compared to 8 years ago is so incredibly crowded. So 8 years ago, we still had, a lot of agencies about, but now more than ever, the space is really crowded and there's a lot of agencies vying for attention as a result of that. So, knowing how to do sales, making sure that you're getting good case studies so people can see, where you've done that for someone else before and how that might work for them, really kind of showcasing your experience and mixing up your sales channels. So, I've spoken to a lot of agency owners about this. Some are doing outbound and it's working really, really well for them. Some are doing outbound and they say it doesn't work at all. Some are, doing it through events, marketing, networking. Some are doing it through advertising. Some are doing it through, promoted case studies. I think there's a lot of different ways to do sales, but most importantly, I would say a big part of this is just building a brand. A lot of people who look for agencies in this space are looking for word of mouth, or looking for someone they've heard of, or someone that they're familiar with who has a kind of trusted track record. So I think that's a big part of sales, but it's definitely a challenge for a business owner.
Did you participate in some kind of conferences where you had a stand with your own brand?
So we haven't done any stands specifically. I have spoken at conferences. So I spoke at Brighton SEO and I've spoken at other conferences here in the UK that are quite big. I've seen agencies that have stands at those conferences. So I assume that probably does work as well for agencies. It's just not something that we, specifically have tried. I found that speaking at conferences is a nice way to build a profile and showcase expertise. I think for stands, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's just not something we've really tried.
Okay, it's good way. Okay, thank you.
And then I think the other thing that I would say from a challenges perspective is mistakes that we've made that kind of tie in with these challenges. So I think the first challenge or mistake that we made was with regards to our website. So we didn't really have a website for the first couple of years. We just kind of went word of mouth. And I think that made it really difficult for people to find us. And when we then went around to getting a website, it was something that I just kind of threw together. So it wasn't very good. It wasn't very fast. And if I'm being honest, our website today probably still isn't where I want it to be in terms of using it as a marketing and sales tool. So I definitely think we should have invested more in our website and invested in getting it done properly as a result of that. The second thing is a structural challenge as well. So as you grow as an agency, obviously it's how do you build out your structure from a staffing perspective. So I think for us, we just kind of grew very quickly at the start without a proper structure in place. Now we have a better structure and we've had to kind of make some adjustments off the back of that, but that works a lot better for us. And I think the third thing is what I would say is time. So when I sort of said before about taking 2 or 3 years to really get off the ground, because I didn't really want to grow an agency. I was kind of happy just being quite small. I feel like that was wasted time, and we could have done a lot more in those first few years, as opposed, compared to what we do now.
What can you say about micromanagement? I mean that in the start, when you just started to run your own agency and you were working as a marketer, as a director, as a CEO, and etc. But probably a lot of people struggle with micromanagement in the start. Where is that line between micromanagement and trying to build your own workflow? How we can feel it and how to deal it in the start, because I feel that it's really hard to build your own agency and you have a lot of problems in the start. So how to deal with micromanagement issues?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, a lot of that comes down to the difficulty of hiring staff that you don't know as well. So, a big part of that is and it ties back to that point of delegation. So I personally find it very difficult to delegate anyway, which means that, at the start, I was learning a lot myself as a manager. And I think I did probably micromanage quite a lot, because I was very precious and protective over my brand, and I was very protective over the work that we were doing. And I'm still protective to a point over the quality of the work that we're doing. But I think you realize over time that, you can't be there all the time. So I can't be on all the client calls. I can't be, in all the meetings. I can't be managing all the staff. I can't be on all the projects, because if I am, the quality of what I'm doing there, because I'm spread so thinly, is probably not very good. So I think a big thing from a micromanagement perspective is understanding where your time is best spent. And I talk a lot to my staff about, where is your time best spent? So for me, I know that my time is best spent networking, doing sales, talking to people. That's where my kind of skill set lies. I have other people in the team who are good at processes, who are good at technical SEO, who are good at digital PR, who are good at various different things. And for me to try and micromanage them, and at the start it was a little bit like that, it's almost like I'm trying to do too much. And that's when you have things like you don't get a lot of sleep at night, because you're trying to involve yourself in a lot of projects. So I guess I would say that it is difficult at the start when you're trying to build a brand and you're, trying to build something that's representative of you, because I think before you build an agency, it is your reputation, that for the first couple of years, it is directly on you. Whereas once you've started to build that up, people see it more as a kind of broader entity. And I think that is when the difference comes. But I would definitely try and avoid it where possible, just because I think it's damaging to the business long term. You have to learn to trust people effectively. But a big part of that is hiring the right people for the right job.
When you understood that you are ready to hire a team, like really a big team, what was the day? What about your feelings? How you understood it?
Sure. So I think probably about a year and a half into Cedarwood. So when I started, it was just me and one other staff member. So just kind of like an assistant that I'd brought in. And it was probably about a year and a half in, and we'd had 3 clients at the start, and then we'd started to get to kind of client 5 and client 6. And I realized that it was just becoming a little bit too much for me, because I tried to take a holiday, and I'd realized there was just no holiday to be had. Like, I literally just couldn't leave it. My assistant was quite junior at the time, so I couldn't leave it on her to kind of run everything. That absolutely wouldn't have been fair. And I think at that point I realized I needed to start building out a team, but I also needed a team which was slightly more specialized. So my first couple of hires were generic digital marketing execs who covered kind of SEO and PPC, because we had a mixture of the 2 clients. Now, the difficulty with the generic digital marketing exec is it is incredibly difficult to learn SEO or PPC alone, let
Yeah.
alone try and learn both of them and link building, at the same time, and, digital PR at the same time. So I'd realized pretty quickly that, that wasn't the right path. And then I think the other conversation I'd had with one of our digital marketing execs at the time, who's now our head of operations, was, she'd said to me, I'm doing a mixture of all of them, but actually I really like PPC. I'm not so keen on SEO. I'm not so keen on digital PR. And I thought, yeah, it's actually really difficult to find people that specialize across all three of these because they're three very different skill sets with three very different interest areas. So that was probably the point at which I realized I needed to build the team out, because I needed people that specialize. And that meant that immediately I kind of needed three people. I needed someone to do SEO, I needed someone to do digital PR, and I needed someone to do PPC. So that was the foundation of it. In terms of actually how I went about hiring for that, so I tried to keep my costs down again as much as possible. I didn't use any recruiters in the early stages at all. If anything, we've only ever used a recruiter once, in fact, since we've been going, but I am leaning more towards them now, just because we're looking for more senior hires within the market. And also I just don't have time to do the recruitment myself. That's kind of the other element to it. But at the very start, when I did have a little bit more, I used, LinkedIn and Indeed and platforms to just recruit directly. And I recruited graduates who I could train. And it was fairly easy to recruit graduates then. We were getting lots and lots of applications. And that was what I looked for. And, a lot of people ask me what I looked for in a first hire. And I get asked this question a lot because, we're hiring for a graduate at the minute and we've had 820 applications, which is just like, it's an astronomical amount of applications. Like we can't, we've not actually hired the role yet because we're still going through the CVs, because we don't know where to start with it. It's a nightmare, to be honest. And there's probably some very good CVs that will get missed just because we simply have a sheer volume of them. And I know it's a real challenge at the minute for grads to get jobs, and I sympathize with that. But at graduate level, it's really hard because everyone's got a degree, or most people in this country have a degree because pretty much everyone goes to university. And everyone has qualifications, so really then what am I looking for? People that have perhaps shown a real interest in something. That could be, learning the Google Ads skill shop. So going and doing some of the free courses that companies offer, or, having a really keen industry and knowing what's going on in the industry, that type of thing. So I think that was what we looked for in the early stages. And we made some really good hires early on, and that really helped us, from a business perspective to grow. And, some of them are still working with us today. So that's obviously great because it showed that probably was the right place for them at the start. So the hiring part has always been a bit of a challenge. The retention part. So obviously then it's keeping staff. Now, when you're hiring people at graduate level, you kind of find you have two groups of people. You have the people who come in and they love small business and it works really well for them and they want to stay and they want to grow within the team. And then you have the other people who come in for maybe 2-3 years, get their experience, and they want to go to a bigger agency. And you will get a mix of both. And obviously we'd always try and lean towards the first ones, but you're still going to end up with some of the second ones. Mm-hmm. So within retention, we would aim and hope to retain between 75 and 80% of our staff every year. As we get bigger, obviously we're going to have more staff turnover because by nature of it, when you have 12 staff, people are going to leave. But from a retention perspective, we try to give progression. We try to promote development. We try to do that as much as possible. We invest a lot of time and money in it because, the cost of rehiring and retraining someone is expensive, especially if you then hire someone that doesn't work. It's incredibly costly to the business to then, have to replace that role and everything that comes with it. So that's been a big part of it as well. From a culture perspective, we try and build, a good culture where people want to work. So it's comfortable, it's welcoming. We're really flexible. So we try and, give people a really good work-life balance. We try and work around, their hobbies and things that they want to do, things that are important for them. We try and make them feel comfortable and relaxed and not stressed when they're in the working environment. We don't do any work outside of work hours. We just have a 7-hour working day. So, we do try and make the culture as good as we can, whilst also promoting obviously hard work and learning and developing through that. And I think the final thing with building a team, and it's interesting because we've had a lot of graduates, I think when people move on from a team, they get quite shaken by it. They don't, understand the concept of change as much. But I think the biggest thing for me is don't be afraid of change when it's required. So people will move on and people will leave. And sometimes you will have to change up a team because things aren't working. And just not to be afraid of this. So to embrace it, at the end of the day, we're trying to build the most effective team that we have. We want to make a great environment for people to work in, and that's all part of it.
How did you understood that you had your first big fish client? I mean, how it was?
So I think we probably for the first 2-3 years we worked very closely with clients that we'd worked with previously, and these were kind of SMEs, so small medium businesses. In year three, probably towards the end of year three, we started to get interest from bigger clients. And even now we attract a much bigger range of clients than we did previously. A lot of this was because we'd built and established case studies. We also had established accounts. So, a lot of bigger companies want to check the financials of agencies that they work with and check that they're doing everything that they could. But I think for us, we started to get a few bigger inquiries around that time, which was obviously very, very exciting. And it's still very exciting when we get inquiries from bigger companies, because that's we obviously love to work with them. They have good budget, we can do good work, and that's kind of a very exciting time. But I think for us, probably when we got our first big-ish client, which would have been in the finance sector, um, we definitely just threw everything at it. We were working. I think it was the most in-depth proposal we'd ever done. It was about 120 slides. We really went into the website. We did a deep dive in it. We really kind of tore it apart and did everything we could to sort of get that over the line. And that was something that worked really, really well for us, and so on and so forth. And we spent a lot of time nurturing that. And I think, obviously with this slide, we're talking about client relations, but, we spend a lot of time talking to our clients. And that's another way that we kind of get bigger clients, because they then go and talk to their friends and, word of mouth and recommendations. It's been harder since COVID to have good relationships with clients. And I don't mean that I probably didn't sound right, actually. So I wouldn't say good relationships, I'd say stronger relationships. Before COVID, we spent a lot of time seeing our clients. We would go to a lot of regular face-to-face meetings, whereas now it's a bit different. So it's done remotely. I still find it strange that some of our biggest clients we've never met. So we've done everything remotely, from pitch to onboarding to our monthly meetings. We try to kind of go down and see them, but a lot of them aren't office based, or it's very difficult for them to get the whole team together in the office. So we've had clients that have started and left over the course of 3 years, and we've never met them. So it's a different world, I think, of client relations now. But I guess to kind of tie back to your initial point, I think from a client retention perspective, when we do get these big clients, it does make it a little bit more difficult, because I like to go and meet people. I like to see people in person. We'll go and have lunch, or catch up, or whatever the case might be. And it's definitely much more difficult to do that now. And I think without that, you lose a bit of the human aspect. So it's, for my original clients, I would chat to them commonly, quite a lot. I would consider them friends. But for more recent clients, it's a lot more difficult to achieve that.
Do you have any tradition? I know that some companies started to send presents, for example, for their clients on some holidays. For example, is it good? Is it good to keep your warm relationships during the time?
So I think in terms of giving gifts, so we don't tend to do that. We might send like Christmas cards at Christmas, or that type of thing. But I know agencies will, wine and dine clients, and they'll to take them on holidays, and so on and so forth. And I think it's, each agency does what works for them. But for me, I try to steer away from that, because I really want the client to work with us because they're happy with the work that we're doing, rather than because they know they're going to get a free lunch. And I'm the king of the free lunch. I love a free lunch. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's really important to keep a good professional, going for lunch to discuss work is great. But then I think, a holiday, or something more than that is probably something we wouldn't do. Just because it's not really how I would see it doing. But that said, at the minute, I feel like there's definitely more that can be done in the digital space to connect, clients and agencies. But even just from a networking perspective, like we run a networking event in Manchester and trying to get people down to that is like, pulling teeth. It's really, really hard. So I think trying to get people to do anything at the minute is quite difficult.
What about toxic clients? Did you ever met some kind of toxic clients who can be very very nice from the first glance, but during the work you understood that they are people you'd never work with?
Yeah, we've had a couple. I'm glad that sort of in the 8 years, I can name three. Like I know who they are. We don't work with any of them anymore, thankfully. And to be honest, we've not had many of them. We have a really tight onboarding process now where we really kind of get rid of any clients at a very, before they even start with us, that we see any sort of red flags or concerns. But yeah, I've had it all. I've been called ratty. I've been like sent WhatsApp messages at 6:30 p.m. on a Friday demanding phone calls. And then when I've not replied, I've been sent angry messages at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, again on WhatsApp, which is like a personal messaging platform, asking why I haven't replied. And then I've just blocked the client. And then they've got even angrier. And it's like, you can't, most of the time, I feel like 90% of the time, we can identify quite early on where this could potentially become an issue, where people sort of don't respect time or they have unrealistic expectations, anything along those lines. But some do get through the cracks, especially when they sort of start off very nice. And we're very, very strict on it. So I will just bin them straight away. I don't have any, like, we will just end the relationship if anyone is offensive to our staff, if anyone makes them feel uncomfortable, if anyone contacts them inappropriately, anything along those lines. I have no tolerance for it. So we'll just clear them out. And in those two instances, I cleared that client out like within 24 hours.
I had one client, and we just started to work like really 1 week. We were working for 1 week, and in the night between Sunday and Monday, he wrote me at 2 p.m. why my website is not ranked in top 10.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, like what? What are you talking about? I'm sleeping. Why my pages are not indexed? So next day I was so angry, but I tried to be polite. I said that sorry, I don't appreciate such kind of behavior. We cannot work together. I can give you money, you cannot pay me, please just forget about me and delete my number, because it's really but it's really annoying. But in the case when you are just starting your own business and you really need experience, you need case studies, you need you need experience, and sometimes people are working with such kind of clients. So I think the best option is from the scratch, just to explain your client what are rules, uh, how you should work together. The best tip which I can give you, all of you guys, is just do not give your phone number.
Yeah.
Just keep
Yeah.
email, Google meetings, but never never provide your phone number, WhatsApp, LinkedIn. Mm-mm.
I completely agree with that, and I think it's a little. I found it a little bit different because when I'm doing sales, I will often call someone just to have a chat with them. But for my staff, we have a strict no number policy, so we won't give out anyone's phone number to any of our clients. And it's funny because it was a while ago now. It's probably like a year and a half ago. One of our clients had my phone number, and I was on holiday, and they called, so I didn't respond. So then they sent a message, and I just replied and I said, "Hi, um, I'm on vacation. Please, like, liaise with." And I gave them, the email address of another member of the team. And then they just started messaging me back, and I was like, "No, no, no! I've told you I'm on vacation. Like, I've given you someone else to speak to. You now need to go and speak to them." And I was just like, no, I can't. So what I actually do now is I have my phone on DND most of the time, because I get a lot of sales calls from recruiters, and just I think my phone number has found itself on a few random lists, so I get a lot of that. So when I'm at work, particularly if I'm focusing, I'll have it on DND. So obviously I get important calls from some family or close friends, whatever the case might be. But generally, and then at the end of the day, I'll go through and I'll sift through everything else, and that, to be honest, works so much better for me, because I know that I'm like, it's not distracting me. I'm not worried about, you know, external calls or anything like that. And when I'm on holiday, I also put my phone into DND because then I know I can completely sort of switch off. And I didn't actually know that function existed, but one of my colleagues showed me a couple of weeks ago. So I'm loving it. I never knew it was there, but now I've found it. I really like it.
Maybe you can recommend some kind of practices, methodologies of organizing your own work.
So I always say to everyone to put everything on a spreadsheet. Now, this isn't always the best way of doing it, but when I started my business, I found that I had so many things in my head that I was forgetting to do things. So I put everything out on a spreadsheet. I just put it all down there. And now I use a more sophisticated project management tool called Asana, where I put everything on Asana. And I say to my staff all the time, if it's not on Asana, it doesn't exist in my life. And what I mean by that is if it's quite frankly not in my project management tool, I'll forget to do it. So if you need something done, you need to put it on my list. And then every morning I'll go in and I'll check through my list and I'll see what needs to be done that day, and I'll complete whatever's on the list. And if it's not on the list, like I said, it just doesn't exist in my world. And the reason that that happens is because my brain is simply not big enough to keep all of the information. So I can't keep all of our client projects and running the business and doing new business and sales and everything else. You know, it's simply too much. It would overwhelm you. It would stress you. It would, you know, it would cause a lot of issues from that respect. So now I just take it out of my brain and I put it here instead. And I find it just works a lot better for me. And I would really, really recommend that to people, because trying to do it yourself without putting it somewhere externally where you can see it, and also when you can visualize it, especially if you think you have a lot of work on, by being able to visualize something and kind of looking at it, you can see straight away, okay, actually, do you know what? I don't have as much as I thought I did. Or actually, if I block this out of my calendar in the next week, it's more manageable. Whereas just looking at a huge list of things or having a huge list of things in your head can be really overwhelming.
Yeah, thank you. And going to the next topic, which I would like to discuss with you, is about SEO. So, it's a difficult topic in case of digital agency, because a lot of businesses, they have quite different structure, quite different problems, especially technical SEO. So, and different expectations, because some kind of companies provide the really deep technical support, and or in opposite side, for example, you're working with a client who just like doesn't have any developer, but you try to analyze their website, and you see, for example, that they have really a big list of technical issues. So how to deal in these cases? Do you provide your own technical support with developer, or let's talk about it, because it's really a common topic to discuss.
I think, you know, technical SEO is something that is really challenging, especially early on in the agency life, because so when we started, I actually worked with a freelance web developer, and I initially had him as part of Cedarwood because I was like, I really need someone who can code in case we get, you know, people on board that need technical SEO changes where they don't have their own web design and development. You know, predominantly because I was just like, look, you know, this is something that we need to take really seriously. It's something that we need to be, you know, on board with, and it's just something that we need to get to grips with. Now, I think what I would say that I have learned is the importance of working with companies where they have an incumbent web developer. So we initially we talked to companies about potentially doing this for them as part of their SEO package, as part of technical SEO. But honestly, it's an absolute minefield. And I think the most important thing from an agency perspective is defining what your technical SEO offering is. So is it consultancy? Is it consultancy and implementation, or is it consultancy, implementation, and management? And what I mean by that is, are you providing a technical audit and are you giving it to someone to action and leaving it there? Are you providing someone a technical audit? Are you basically showing them how to action it and working with the web developer to action it, their web developer? Or are you doing a technical audit and working with your own web development to action it? And I think it's really important for agency to have one of these three decisive ways of running technical SEO. Because if you don't, what happens is you'll come up with a suggestion. And the one I see most commonly is Core Web Vitals. So, Google's got a Core Web Vitals algorithm update. We must pass Core Web Vitals now. To pass Core Web Vitals for a lot of people is really challenging because their websites just aren't built to do it. Obviously, it's something we want to work towards, but the cost to try and get it passed for some people can be astronomical. And when you're looking at things like cost versus return, it isn't always like the best investment or the wisest investment from a technical perspective. Now, in that instance, the question is, as an agency, what service are you providing? So if you're saying, we're going to do the consultancy and then someone else is going to implement it, but let's say, for example, they aren't able to implement it and it doesn't pass Core Web Vitals, who is at fault? So, who is the person that is ultimately responsible for that? And if it impacts SEO performance, then who then has to go away and do something with that? So I think in terms of technical SEO, as an agency, you have to have a really clearly defined proposition as to what the implementation looks like. And I think that's the most important thing, because a lot of agencies can do technical SEO and a lot of them do it in depth, and you do your log file analysis and you do everything along those lines. And most websites are set up quite well technically from an SEO standpoint from the start. But I think where it falls down is in that unstructured implementation.
Yeah, it's a typical mistake when some kind of SEO freelancer go through Core Web Vitals and like, oh, you have small page speed, you need to fix this, this, and this. But how? You are talking to a business owner. He doesn't care how.
Yeah.
He just want to get things done. So if you don't know how to fix it, you can just underline or highlight that, for example, hi, you have some kind of issues, unfortunately I don't know how to fix it, but as a CEO and according to Google documentation, I know that this is important. If you would like, I can research or investigate it additionally. Please do not provide this in your audit, because at least it's not a good point for you as a specialist if you don't know how to fix it. And the second point is that not all of Core Web Vitals issues are really so critical. I mean, in case when you are an agency, your main goal is drive traffic and leads.
Yep.
If you have page speed 86 instead of 100, it's not a big deal, really, believe me. Of course, we have some crucial mistakes like image sizes, or some really blocking JavaScripts which affect to loading of the page. But if you don't know how to fix it, just shut up, please, and do not provide it, because it's not a good deal for you as a specialist. What it's not a SEO in general. I understand that really good technical SEO specialists, they are half developers, or at least they have a degree, or at least they had some kind of experience in the past. There are a lot of excellent SEO specialists who were working as a programmer or developer or full stack developer, and then switch to SEO. So at least you can get a consultation from such people. But yeah, I agree. It's especially for business. They don't care. They are not so interested in it. They just looking at your audit with some kind of blah 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 technical stuff. But the main point, how much money do we spend for developer to fix all of those issues,
Yeah.
and does it really help me to get ranked on the first positions? No, I don't think so. It's not so important. Your main goal is to drive money to your client. That's the point. So you can skip it, just skip it. If you don't have enough experience, just skip it. Focus on your content, focus on the backlinks, focus to your brand performance, and that's all. It's so harmful topic for me. Yeah. Okay. So digital PR, yeah, the favorite one. What about digital PR?
I mean, digital PR is such an interesting space at the minute. I think for everyone. I think we've obviously had the Google algorithm leak, which has spoken quite a bit about digital PR and the value of links. We have discussions around Nofollow and Dofollow links, which here in the UK, particularly, a lot more publications are giving Nofollow links now as opposed to Dofollow links. So that's another consideration. And then we have this kind of broader conversation around digital PR about what what we're doing it for, because I think there's let's say there's 3 different types of digital PR. So there's digital PR, which is just for links. And that's people are just doing it for links and they're just spamming. And I don't think it's really doing anything from a brand building perspective. It's a little bit spammy. You've got digital PR for brand and links, which is where you're building brand and you're maybe showcasing your EEAT signals, which is great for, YML space or anything along those lines. And then you've got digital PR, which is a brand builder, and you're getting links as a kind of byproduct of that. So there's a number of different ways that digital PR is being used in this space at the minute. But fundamentally, as an agency who offers this service, I think the other thing that we're seeing at the minute is digital PR in some instances is a race to the bottom. So we're seeing some agencies, now offering no contracts. We're seeing some agencies kind of with really heavy link targets, and it's becoming a more challenging space to operate in. I think operationally you're also seeing a lot of freelancers in the space, so that again, from a pricing perspective can make it a little bit more competitive. But really, we find digital PR to be a really effective service. It does support our SEO service, and in many cases it stands alone aside our SEO service. So we have some clients that just do digital PR and some that do SEO and digital PR. But I think fundamentally the key to running it effectively agency side is educating your clients on what it is and why we're doing it in the first place. So it isn't just a link building exercise, it's a brand building exercise. It can feed into your other channels and it can help to promote, your expertise, your experience, your authority, trust, all those things that SEO value and all those things that we're looking for and we're trying to enhance from that perspective. But it can also build the people within your brand. So thought leadership, any kind of data-led campaigns can really showcase that expertise. And I think it's driving a lot of holistic value at the minute. It is just very much about what that service looks like and what you want it to do.
How do you make reports for clients about your digital PR campaigns? What key metrics do you use to provide the value of your campaigns?
So it depends depending on which client we're working with. So for some clients, we'll look at things like brand, share of voice, coverage, so more traditional PR metrics. But for the majority of our clients, we'll focus on links achieved, relevancy of links, what the publications that they have come from, and the impact that has had on, if we're targeting specific pages or specific subsections of the website, let's say, we'll report back on the impact it's had on that from sort of a traffic and conversions perspective. We'll always try and link it back to a numerical metric like additional number of sales, additional number of leads, etc. But fundamentally, we are reporting on the quality and relevancy of the links that we're creating.
It's a common discussion about Dofollow and Nofollow links. So, how, for example, a lot of clients, especially when they are not do not have a lot of knowledge about SEO in general, they just heard that Dofollow links are important. So, I don't want to get any Nofollow links. How you can argument with them that Nofollow links are also important, or that they work? What do you think about this topic?
Yeah, so definitely don't get me wrong, we would obviously love do follow links. So, they are kind of the ultimate goal and the ultimate gold dust because they are the ultimate kind of tick of authority and they pass authority and everything along those lines, which is great. So, fundamentally they are something that we'll always aim towards. But no, the conversation around no follow links is really interesting because, we've seen time and time again, some people will say that Google said that they don't count. And then they've said, oh, no, wait a minute, Google's changed from saying they don't count to saying it's just an indicator, which means it actually does count or it does have some kind of influence. And I think because Google hasn't really clarified its standpoint on this, that does make it more difficult because we don't know exactly the impact it has. But I think what I would say is that we know for SEO, things like EAT are important. While we know they're not a direct ranking factor, we know that they do play an important role in that. And everything that a no-follow link does boosts that. So if you're getting a no-follow link on a good publication, you are building your expertise, you're building your experience, you're building your authority, and you're building your trust. And whether it passes authority or not, it's still contributing to that broader conversation. So it's still getting your brand talked about. It's still putting the relevancy in there. So it's still putting your brand at the center of an important conversation. And because of that, I think there is still quite a lot of value behind it. And we've seen even for clients that we work with, where we've built quite a lot of no follow links, not on purpose, but just as a kind of byproduct of campaigns that we've done, that we've still seen a really good uplift off it. So I definitely think there's value in it, and I wouldn't encourage people to discount it from their strategies, because I think you're cutting out a big chunk of your market, especially now.
For example, some client can tell you that I have a friend, I have a brother, I have a sister who told me that we need some kind of backlinks and we need to use PBNs or even some kind of other black hat techniques. How you can, what recommendation can you give how to talk with them?
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because I think you also see a lot of these companies that operate PBNs offering deals like, pay £5,000 and you'll get 10 links. And it's a guaranteed. So when those clients are going back to their management and they're saying we're getting a guaranteed return, that's a big buy-in for them, right? Because it's a sales pitch. Whereas when we're saying to them, well, pay £5,000 and you'll get links, but we can't guarantee you a certain number because that's not how digital PR works. It's actually a harder sale. So people operating PBNs are making it more difficult for us. But fundamentally, I have seen some websites absolutely decimated by bad black hat link building. Not that we've done, but that other people have done. And I have seen websites come to us, and especially after Penguin, the big Penguin 2.0, I had clients that came to us, and for a year and a half, they did nothing. And it was nearly business ending for them. They were that badly hit because they had bought a ton of links. They were, commenting, spamming. They were guest posting. They were doing everything under the sun. They were really happy because it was working really well for them. And then all of a sudden,
Until the update. Until
until,
the
yeah,
update.
exactly. And now all of a sudden they've kind of come to us and they've said, help us. And it's kind of frustrating because, we even have conversation with sort of one or two clients at the minute, and they're sort of saying, how are we going to improve? And you're saying to them, look, you've done a lot of damage over a long period of time. So they even still have links from like blogger networks that are passing authority now, but over time they will stop passing authority as those blogger networks get banned. And that actually impacts our campaigns because it knocks them back from where they are now. So they think that they've gone downhill, but actually what you're saying to them is, no, you've got a lot further to go, because you haven't felt the full impact of the work you've done previously. So what we find sometimes is that for the first 3 months of a campaign, we can still see a downward trend. And that's a very difficult conversation with the client, because we're saying to them, oh, actually, say there's a spam update and Google discounts a load of these PBNs again, and they take a hit, and they're like, oh, what have you done? And it's like, no, it's actually nothing to do with us. It's just that you've got all of these blogs that were previously counting towards that have now been penalized because they're part of a blogger network. And so you've continued to drop. And I think a lot of brands don't realize that when they engage in black hat link tactics, the damage isn't just done then, it's done for years to come, because over time, those links become worth less and less and less and less. And for agencies like us that are then trying to come in and pick up the pieces of that, it's a really, really difficult conversation, because we're having to say to them, you're still going to see the impact of this for, a year or 2 years or 3 years. So you might even, where you are now, might still be ahead of where you really should be. And we've had clients that have come to us and they said, well, I used to be ranking in position 1 for laser eye surgery, let's say. And they're like, now we're in position 10 and we need to get back to position 1 because we used to be there and we should be there. And the conversation you're having to have with them is, well, actually, no, you should never have been there. You got there because you bought a load of links and manipulated the system. And now you've been penalized for it. So it's not a case that we're going to undo something and put you back to position 1. You probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. And I think that's a really difficult conversation to have and a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of clients.
I was talking with my clients. They told me, they teach me how to build links. For example, you need to put our target keywords as your anchor, or we need to buy 1,000 backlinks for 20 pounds, for example, and we will be happy. And they told, sorry, no, until I am responsible for this, I will do my work, so please keep your comments away of my job. I
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
maybe it's not polite, maybe it's not correct, but come on, you're a business owner, so be a business owner. Do not touch my work because you hired me. So please, you need to believe me and trust me.
Exactly.
You will get your results and you will see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But until I'm working, please do not disturb me. I just doing my work. I'm not going to teach you how to do your business. So let people do their job. But a little disclaimer about black hat and gray hat techniques. We are talking about real businesses, okay? In this video, of course, in some kind of affiliate niches, or some gray hat niches, of course, those kind of link building techniques, they're still working and it's fine. But for you, oh dear readers and viewers, you should know that niches which are not allowed in Google advertisement, the gray and black hat techniques, they work because it's Google and we need to play according to Google rules. So it was a small disclaimer about niches. So thank you. I also wanted to ask you about case studies. So it's sometimes it's really hard to produce any kind of case study. How what recommendations can you give to SEO specialists? How we can do it? For example, sometimes we are working in in real businesses like plumbing. Okay, it's a good niche, it's a really good niche, but how I can set up my digital PR campaign and really boost it to the sky, but the niche is really boring, you know? What I can talk about? I'm not a plumber, I'm not an expert, so what recommendations can you give to people who are working in some kind of real businesses, but which are not so popular for discussing in the world?
I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is that case studies are so important. So we have, I think we have nearly 30 case studies on our website just for digital PR. And when people are coming in and they're looking at us as a business, one of the first things they want to look at is, can they do this? Can they do this service? Oh, hang on a minute. Here's 30 examples of where they've done it before. Now, if businesses are in let's say a slightly drier niche, so there's some niches that we work with where digital PR is great. Garden furniture, watches, really exciting. There's a lot that we can talk about. There's other niches where it's perhaps a little bit more difficult. So let's say, in the vaping space or the gambling space or anything along those lines. And I think what is more important in those niches is case studies, because they want to see examples of where you've done it before in a niche that isn't as easy to do digital PR in. So they want to see examples of what you've done and how you've made it creative when you're talking about a drier topic. So I would say that in those particular spaces, writing and creating case studies is even more important. Now, that's a really difficult niche to build links in, or that's really hard and I can't think of anything exciting to kind of talk about from that perspective. But there's always something exciting to talk about, or there is always a data piece that can be linked to something exciting to talk about. So I think what I would say is that if you're looking for case studies and you are working with a client that's in maybe a more difficult niche, spend more time on your ideation. Really look outside the box, have a look, take your time researching, look at what people have covered previously, look at what people want to talk about. You can use your tools like BuzzSumo and so on and so forth to monitor trends and see what people are talking about, what journalists want to talk about, and get your team together and just have a really good think. Bring ideas out, make it exciting. Understand, there was an agency in our space that has a plumbing client and recently did, the ideal length to take a bath. So, that's kind of interesting. Like, how long should I be in the bath? I would have no idea personally. And there's loads of ways you can tie things into a human interest angle as well. So what I would say with digital PR is that case studies are really important, but even more important are the case studies in those drier topics. So people who are working in that space can see how you can make that come alive and get coverage for it.
It takes a lot of time, to be honest. Like, to set up a really good digital PR campaign, you need really a lot of time and a lot of work. So when we are talking about that all of links are free, it means that people sometimes didn't calculate the work time of your team and the resources which you spent to do these case studies. I remember one of my case study was about VPN and cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and it was so interesting for me because it was my first link from tech radar. It's like, for me as a link builder, it was, wow, I did it, I did that link. But I spent for those case study at least 4 months. I hired a really cybersecurity specialist. I spent dozens of time pitching journalists on MacRack and finding that journalists who are talking about cybersecurity and try to explain them. And to be honest, I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, but I did it. And it was so hard, but the link is free. Yeah, I didn't pay anything for that case study. I mean that I didn't pay to journalist,
Yeah.
but I spend money of my company to do this case study research. I get my salary because I was working on it a lot of hours. So yeah, just understanding that to set up digital PR campaign, it's really a huge work.
Yeah.
So, and it's super, you got super feelings when you got that first links. And I remember that feeling when it was published, and I said, woohoo, this is my first authority link, I'm so happy. Can you please, maybe you have some funny stories about in such case about your digital PR campaigns, maybe some kind of really skyrocket campaigns which really impress.
We had, I mean, we've done a few different campaigns over the year that have worked sort of really, really well across, I guess, a number of different niches. One that we had here in the UK was back when we had Brexit. We did a Brexit Christmas tree. Here in the UK, it was quite divided. So it was like 50-50, 50% wanted, 50% people didn't. And we basically created a Christmas tree and we decorated it with like half for people wanting to leave and half for people wanting to remain. And we put it on a turntable. And the idea was you could buy it and you could spin it around depending on who was coming over for Christmas. So, like, if you had people coming around for Christmas that wanted to vote leave, you would put the leave side of the tree on. And if you had remain, you would put the remain side of the tree on. And you just kind of spun it around depending on who was coming over to kind of keep the whole family happy, like, regardless of kind of how they were planning to vote. And that got a lot of traction. That did really, really well. We did kind of a video promoting it. We put a product page on our client's website. People tried to buy it, even though it didn't really exist. So that was kind of, but that got a lot of people talking about it. We made it quite comical, quite lighthearted. That's what it was designed to be. So that worked really well for us. We did it for a Christmas tree retailer. And that was, really sort of topical and trending at the time. And a lot of people liked it. And another piece that did sort of really well for us that was a lot really, really low cost was when we came to the end of lockdown after COVID here in the UK, houseplants. So a lot of people were talking about pets and how pets would feel lonely because they had their owners around the whole time during lockdown, and then the owners would go back to work and they would be, feeling separation anxiety. So we looked at plants and we looked at how plants would feel without owners around, and we looked at things like, they'd miss the sound of their voice and the temperature would be a bit cooler because they wouldn't have the heating on in the house, so on and so forth. And we did a piece around that. We spoke to an expert and that got, I think, about 35 links across major publications here in the UK. again, it was a really, really simple idea, and it worked really well. And you can probably tell actually from behind me here, I'm not very good with houseplants because my houseplant is,
Hmm.
yeah, that's what happens when you go back to work.
Yeah. That's why I don't have any plans at home.
This one is, yeah, I think this one is on its last legs, unfortunately.
About the digital PR campaigns, do you think that in case of digital PR campaigns, we should track the visibility of the keywords, or should we track brand mentions? What the right point in it?
I think it's both. So I think that we should be I think we need to have visibility of brand mentions because I think it's a branding piece. But fundamentally, when people are investing in digital PR, they want to know what return they're going to get. So they want to know, I'm investing this much, what return am I going to get from that? And where that return is going to come from is essentially people searching for those keywords and either buying that product or converting for that service. So I think fundamentally, from a business perspective, the keyword tracking, especially if it's high intent keywords, is far more valuable than the brand visibility. But of course, the brand visibility will contribute towards, over time, the potentially conversions there. So you do need to have visibility over both. But I think as a direct return metric, I would be looking more at the keywords and the brand visibility.
Okay, so for now, I have prepared a few questions to discuss with you. So, the first one: what specific moment of turning point made you realize your SEO agency was going to be successful? Do you remember that day?
That is it's a really difficult question, because I think I always feel like Cedarwood is a work in progress, although I know now, sort of 8 years in, and we have done really well. I guess we can classify as successful. I think for me, it was probably when we moved into our office in Manchester City Centre. So for the first few years, we had, worked in the shipping containers, and then we'd moved to the slightly bigger shipping container. But I think when we got our first office, and it was in number one Spinningfields, which is quite a good address here in the UK, like it's right in the middle of the city centre. It's right in the heart of the business district. And we had a really nice office there. I think when we moved into there, that was probably a big game changer for us because we all of a sudden became a much more reputable industry, a much more reputable agency. We had a good level of staff. We had specialists in each of our sections: SEO, PPC, and digital PR. And we also then had an address and a formal office to match it. Whereas previously, because we've been working in a shipping container, I'd always still felt like we were a bit of a startup. So I think that's probably where, for me, the biggest turning point was.
What to do for those people who have limited resources? What first steps could you recommend?
So I think keeping things as lean as you possibly can at the start is really important. I've seen some people kind of start up businesses, and the first thing they've done is get like stationery printed, or all these kind of additional extras, or they've thrown a big welcome party and they've done a lot along those lines. We didn't do any of that, and maybe it hurt us a little bit from a branding perspective, but from a financial perspective it definitely benefited us. And I think if you're working on limited resources, you really have to save as much as you possibly can. Even when I started Cedarwood, I was taking like the mega bus, which is like a bus, a really cheap bus that we have here in the UK, instead of taking the train, because the trains are really expensive. So, for example, if I wanted to take a train to London, it would be, I think, well, I'm going tomorrow and it's like £100 one way. Whereas if I was to take the bus, it's like a tenner. And albeit it's a bit more of a painful trip, it takes longer, it takes an extra 2 hours. But again, it was 90 quid back in the bank. So, when you're starting up, every little bit counts, and you can still work on the bus, you can still get your laptop out, you can still be as effective as you would previously. But I think it's little movements like that that make a big difference. So just making sure that you're being as kind of effective with the money that you have as possible, I think plays a big role. But also, making sure that you're investing wisely, and and taking the right decisions where you can.
What is your opinion about people who are working on a few jobs in the same time? I mean, we are living in crazy world, and taxes are high. Living, especially in United Kingdom, is really expensive. So, and official salaries, according to statistics, it's not so high. So, sometimes people really cannot afford to good their life, so they should work at least 2 3 works. What's your opinion as a business owner on this?
So it's interesting you say that, because I think now more than ever, I know people that are working multiple jobs, which is something that I'd not really seen before, particularly, but I would say for the last maybe 10 years, I didn't know that many people that worked an extra job on top of their day job. But now I know a lot of people that have a weekend job or an evening job, whether it be hospitality, whether it be working in a shop, whether it be, sort of anything to kind of make a bit of extra cash. I think particularly if you are, what I would say is, and I've had this conversation recently with people who look to potentially go freelance, I really think that you need to have a good network before you start an agency or before you start freelance. And I think for a lot of people, the idea of having an SEO agency is very appealing. It's, you get flexibility over your own work schedule and you're your own boss. And, that there are some really good, attractive parts of it, but it takes a while to get to that point. And you do have to have help, and you have to have a lot of work along the way. And the climate at the minute is difficult for starting agency. It's difficult for starting freelance. And I think the first thing I would say is that, ideally working 2 or 3 jobs, if you're trying to start an agency, I don't think it will work for you, because you will, starting an agency really takes all your time and resource. So I think the thing I would say is make sure you're in a position to do it first, whether it's that you've got the financial support there, whether you've got the support from a partner or relative, whether you've got a couple of clients that would potentially want to work with you, or whether you've taken the time to build that network and that capacity first before you take the leap, rather than taking the leap and then realizing that you need to do other work to keep the money in, because that's where you're going to very quickly see a burnout, and you're also not going to be able to give your agency the support that it needs.
Thank you. And next question: how to identify the right fit to your team during the hiring process? Maybe you have some tricky questions or some kind of red flags which are really important for you when you're hiring some people to your team.
Yeah, so I mean, I do have specific questions that I ask to try and sort of sort this out. So I will always ask people what's going on in the industry. So, when I mentioned earlier about value in a team, is because SEO is ever changing, it is really important to have people on board that know what's changing and what's evolving. And I think if people have no awareness of what's happening in the industry, it shows they probably haven't done any research, and nor are they interested enough to do so. So that to me would, I guess, be a red flag. Other things that I will ask people is, what do they want to get out of the role? So I'm really, looking for people to understand, do people want to learn? Sometimes we have people that say, I want to be a manager in the next 6 months. And that to me might be, a need for further questions, because that's very quick, especially if they're at a kind of graduate level. So, again, I think that's important. And the third thing that I will ask them is, why do you want to work with Cedarwood? So I really need them to be able to tell me why they've picked Cedarwood instead of like another business. And the reason that I'm asking them that is because I want to be sure that when they're applying to work at Cedarwood, that it's because they want to work at Cedarwood, as opposed to, just needing a job. Because if they just need a job, then they maybe aren't that interested in working for us as a business. And also it's because they've taken the time to research and understand why we might be the right company for them, and therefore they're probably more likely to enjoy what they're doing when they get here.
Just about hiring, I'm interested. Maybe you have some special feelings when you are talking to people person to person during the interview, and the person is talking everything fine, everything in a good way, but how you can feel that this is exactly that person which you would like work with? Maybe some kind of soft skills. What do you pay attention except the hard skills?
So we are, I mean, I guess I'm always looking for someone that communicates well. A big part of our industry is being able to communicate effectively with our clients, and that's really important. I want someone that I feel that our clients are going to build a good relationship with, someone that feels genuinely going to care about the work that they're doing and take pride in what they're doing, but also to be an effective communicator. So I am looking for someone who, is going to be able to be quite honest and upfront with our clients. I think that's a really important soft skill. Yeah, I'm looking for someone that kind of shows a genuine interest, and I think that is important. So I need to see a genuine, it's almost like a passion, or I need to see that sort of a level of engagement or a level of interest. Perhaps they've learned, they've looked up about the business, or they've seen something that we've done recently, and I think that as a soft skill is really important from a transferable perspective. And I think the other thing I'm really looking for is someone who I feel like is going to get on with our team. So we're a small business, we're 12 people, and we have a really, really good culture. We have a really, really good working environment. And I'm really looking for someone that is going to enjoy working within that. So when I'm looking for a soft skill, I'm looking for someone who I feel is going to have a good time, not just someone that's going to, be great with our team, but also someone who I feel we're going to be able to add value to.
The last question: how did you stay motivated and focused during the hardest times in your business journey?
I'm a big music fan. And I think sometimes when things are very difficult, although to be for every morning I listen to music, it's very important to me. But I think during sort of the most difficult times in my business journey, I lent on that quite a lot. So I'm a big fan of Glenn Fry, very big fan of Tom Petty. So it's older, I guess more traditional rock music, I think you could probably say.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've always found their music to be incredibly inspirational, and particularly, a lot of it talks about, well, not a lot of it, but some of it talks about, overcoming difficult times, and I think that ties in quite nicely with that. So for me, if I am, having a difficult time with the business, I will take a bit of time to just reflect away from the business. And I will use that as kind of an inspiration and a support, as opposed to, trying to stay within the business and trying to sort things out work-wise. I'll actually take some time away and focus on something that's a little bit outside of that, and just sort of, listen to that or watch. I really like watching live concert gigs. There's one from the 1980s. There's like a Tom Petty Bridge Street School benefit. It's an hour long, and I watch that most days. I just find it really helps me to sort of zone out and refocus on what I'm doing.
Yeah, my favorite song is Roxanne. I always listen it when I have some really difficult times, and
Really
this
good one.
song keep me motivated. I'm also a big fan of music, so I agree. Yeah, music can save the world. Okay, thank you very much that you coming to us. Thank you for your inspiring speech. I really hope that people who will watch this video will really stay motivated, and I wish you good luck. Subscribe to our channel and put some like comments, because we really appreciate it. We really do hard work to do these episodes. We really try to do our best for you. So see you next episode. Bye.